Yo, what is going on, guys? Jay here. Today we're talking some hip hop about the latest. This isn't the latest, but this was circulating probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Complex Music dropped their top 50 Atlanta rappers of all time. Now, today I'm not outright reacting to that list, although I think they did fairly good in some areas, fairly bad in some others, but it did inspire me to make my own top 10 list. Now, first of all, before we get into it, let's shout out the socials. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Or wait till you make it through the video and see if you enjoyed it before you do that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to beg for it now. Only do that if you're really fucking with the content and what I have to say. But hey, go check out the gram, talking.hiphop, and the Talking Hip Hop Show over on Spotify. Great podcast that I do. If you want to go hear me talk about the new music that's coming out weekly, as well as my rotation and other going-ons of the music world, that is the place to be. Anyway, let's get into it. Let me start off by saying, and I feel like this is pretty obvious, but not only have I not heard every rapper that's on the top 50 list, I haven't heard an album by probably at least 20 of them. You know what I mean? Like, they're 50 rappers from one area, that's a lot of rappers. You gotta understand, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people in there that I have not tapped into, and there are a lot of rappers on there that I haven't heard a lot of their music. There are some that I have on this list that I haven't heard a lot of their music. And when I get into that, I will explain, why that may be, why I have them on the list if I haven't heard all their music. But sometimes you gotta take things like influence, sales into account. Before we get into my honorable mentions, I do want to quickly just mention a couple rappers that Complex did have over Jid on the list, because I feel like that is Complex's biggest miss. Is they had Jid at 27 with rappers like Lotto, Lil Yachty, Waka Flocka Flame, Gunna, and the Migos over him, as well as, again, a handful of rappers that I think really probably aren't better than Jid. I know Jid is relatively new to the game, but guess what? So is Yachty. So how are you going to put Yachty or Lotto over him? Like, The Forever Story isn't probably a top 5 Atlanta album of all time. Like, let's keep it a buck. Looking at the list I have in front of me right now, I would actually go as far to say it is a top 3 Atlanta album of all time. But anyway, my honorable mentions, let's get into it real quick. 2 Chainz, who I feel like I left off the list because I don't think he has a particular classic or super influential project, not one that I've heard or know of at least. The Migos, just as a whole, I know in the list it was Offset, Takeoff, and Quavo on the list, but I just have the 3 of them as an honorable mention because I wouldn't have put any of the 3 of them into this top 10. Of course, the Migos as a whole are super influential and contributed a lot to the sound of current mainstream rap. When you think about the type of stuff they were rapping about and the use of the triplet flows, they had hella hits. Culture, some people would argue, is a trap classic. I could see the argument, although it's not personally my favorite album of all time or anything like that. This top 10 is pretty tight, and I'm not going to throw, just Takeoff or just Offset, although they are, in their own right, legends from where they're from. Maybe not Quavo as much, but Rocket Power was a really good solo album, I will say. That surprised me. Ludacris is someone who I left off just because I haven't heard a lot of his music. I haven't heard a solo album from him. Although, again, I do know he's influential. He was mega popular, and I know he's well respected. So that's just on me. I gotta listen to more Ludacris. Maybe we'll talk about him again here in the future. Same goes for CeeLo Green, who, again, I've heard some of his songs with Goody Mob, and that alone, again, maybe should get him placement in top 10, but I'm not gonna do that just because I haven't listened to any of their music except for really the track Cell Therapy. I still gotta listen to a project from them, but shout out CeeLo. As well as Young Jeezy, who I have heard projects from. I heard I think a Hustler Music 101, one of his first couple projects that a lot of people respect. It's very clear that he was one of the first people to put the blueprint out there for trap music, along with acts like T.I. and Gucci Mane, who we'll talk about later. But I've also heard some of his more recent projects, like Snowfall, as well as his 2020 record that I'm honestly forgetting the name of. And not enough for me to put him in the top 10, although, again, very influential, very respected, and someone that I personally have to listen to more of. I also left Childish Gambino off of here because although this, I know some people might be not too happy about this, because the internet, some people might view as a classic. Again, I'm not going to be like, oh, no, it's not. I don't think that's a terrible take. But the rest of his catalog, that maybe a classic. It's his best album. I do think a lot of the rappers that I have on this list have an album better than that. And also just, he doesn't really embody what it means to be an Atlanta rapper. He is a rapper from Atlanta, but his music is so much more centric of somebody like a Kanye West, even like a Drake, where it's very much in a lot of different lanes. It's very experimental. It's pop centric at some points, especially like his newest record, Bando Stone in the New World. Maybe if that record wasn't disappointing to say the least, he could have gotten a placement on here. But yeah, it's he's just not in the same category as the rest of these guys. Our final honorable mention is to Lil Baby, who I essentially decided to leave off of this list. Like, he would be my number 11 if we're being completely honest. Based on all these rappers and what I've heard from them, he would be my number 11 because he is the most traditional Atlanta rapper out now, and an album like My Turn is one of the best trap albums of the 2020s, in my personal opinion. He's got solid discography. He could flow, he could rap, he could get in his lyrical bag sometimes when he wants, and he has a distinct sound. And although he does need to switch that sound up if he wants to stay at the top of the mountain where he was a few years ago in his next project, which, hey, he just said on Instagram is 80% done. I'm very excited. But the rigidity of his style and how close he stuck to his guns with it is kind of what keeps him off this list. Although, one more great album, one more smash hit, he really could catch a place in the top 10. Now, moving on to number 10, we have a rapper that Complex had at number 12. I'm bringing in Playboi Carti. I think a lot of people might be surprised that I even have him in my top 10 because, like, Carti has pretty dog shit lyrics, but he is obviously in some way or another going to be part of the future, the next decade of hip-hop, if he ever drops again. He has been so influential on the fashion, on the sound, on the aesthetic, on the way these rappers market themselves online, on the whole aura idea, on how there are so many rappers who, speak, or not speak, but they post up with all this different lingo and all emojis and, plus signs and stuff like that. He has been so influential on the lingo as well, too, though. A lot of terms he's popularized. He has 3 pretty damn great albums with Self-Titled, with Dialect, and with Whole Lotta Red, which Whole Lotta Red was it was so innovative. And at the time when that album dropped, I hated it. I didn't like Carti. I thought that album was dog shit. But 4 years removed, he has changed the scene, the space of hip-hop and of mainstream hip-hop, well, also of bubbling underground hip-hop when you're talking about pop rage, when you're talking about rage in general, that rage trap stuff, and all these rappers who are starting to blow up, like his label mates, or label signees, I should say, like the Ken Carsons and Destroy Lonelys of the world, as well as other artists who are emulating his sound outright, like Rich Amiri, and getting popular off of it. The influence Carti has brought to the game is only comparable to other rappers we will talk about later on this list. And again, he is someone who, if he continues to have the elite output he does, he could find himself higher up on this list. Because, again, although he's not the best rapper or lyricist or anything like that, he's done so much for the game, and he brings so much to his music. He is one of these people like Travis Scott, like Drake in a sense, who has changed the way that people view hip-hop, where these days it's a lot more about the vibe and the production than it is the message and the lyricism. And although I'm a big fan of the message and the lyricism, and I think that's far more important than vibes, I'll still catch a vibe, you know what I mean? I still understand why that's popular, and I still value things like that Playboi Carti does so well. Number 9, we have Gucci Mane. He's number 4 on Complex's list, and Gucci's someone who I've heard some of his newer projects. His newer projects aren't that good. I've heard his, what some people might call a classic album, The State vs. Roderick Davis, which has classic Gucci Mane songs like Lemonade, Classical, and Heavy. And again, it's one of these albums that you could really pinpoint as a blueprint for the modern trap scene and the modern sound of Atlanta over the last 10 years. Though not being a particular great lyricist, he does embody what trap music is really about, rapping about making all this money, all these cool cars he has, flipping dope, and being with a lot of women, which again, trap music and the modern Atlanta scene in general, that is what a lot of it is about. I always talk about the 3 W's, woman, wealth, and weed, that mainstream rap tends to be about. And Gucci Mane though not one of, not the first person to ever do it, definitely someone who popularized it and really stuck to his guns with that. And like I said, The State versus Roderick Davis is a very good project. If you want to tap into it, it's the best Gucci album I've heard. He has longevity in the game, of course, and has a plethora of mixtapes with bad album covers. He is someone that I need to listen to more of his music to fully understand his impact. And, maybe I'm placing him too high, too low. But from what I could gather so far, I think 9 is a calm spot for him. At number 8, I have Complex's number 11 pick, 21 Savage. First of all, we gotta ask ourselves, is 21 Savage even a Atlanta rapper? Is he a UK rapper? No, obviously not. He has been super pivotal to popularizing the landscape of mainstream rap and trap music in general. Again, he's big on the 3 W's, especially the W that stands for woman, and especially the W that stands for wealth. He has also popularized, again, these ideals that also were kind of popularized by Future are being very, what's the word I'm looking for? Just very unbothered. 21 Savage is always rapping about not necessarily being stoic, but you know what I mean? He doesn't care. And it's not that he doesn't care, but, the word I'm looking for, this idea of being numb, which again, Future has popularized and a lot of rappers talk about in general. Lil Baby is on as well, but you go look at his 2017 track like Numb the Pain with the Money off of the Issa album. He has an incredible discography in the trap scene. When you look at I Am Greater Than I Was, when you look at American Dream, when you look at Savage Mode 1 and 2, and his contributions on Metro Boomin's albums as well, like Heroes and Villains and Not All Heroes Wear Capes, 21 Savage does tend to be a little bit of a one-trick pony, but when it comes to making great albums, he does it. When it comes to making banger verses, he does it. Even though, again, it might not differ too much from his other work, he always finds a way to make it enjoyable, whether it be new bars on his song. Man, what track is this? Oh, on the new Drake track off of 100 Gigs where he says, I see red Clifford. He got to be one of the first rappers. He's probably the first rapper to mention Clifford in a rap song. Not even Soulja Boy has done that. Clifford the Big Red Dog. Shout out to the boy. Clifford, obviously, not Drizzy Drake. But he is someone who time and time again has proven to stand the test of time in the mainstream rap game, and as well as putting out really good albums. You know what I mean? Like I said, I Am Greater Than I Was is better than a lot of Atlanta rappers' best albums. Same with Savage Mode 2 and same with American Dream. 21 Savage just has an amazing knack for what he does. At number 7, some people are going to roll their eyes at this, but it really is because JID only has 3 albums out. That is what is holding him down here when it's all said and done, could be one of the Atlanta top 3, one of the Atlanta GOATs, right? Like I said, he was number 27 on Complex's list, and I complained that he should be higher, so I bet a lot of you were expecting top 5 for him. But we, of course, have to talk about the fact that JID doesn't use the typical aesthetics and sound of Atlanta rap throughout the years, right? He's in that lyrical miracle type of bag, always rapping on boom bap beats and great production. That does not feature trap drums very often, although when it does on a track like Off D's, he is known to spaz. And like I said, he is one of the best. He is a top 3 Atlanta album with the Forever Story. But again, he has 3 albums. He is newer to the game than pretty much every rapper on here. He came out at the same time as Cardi, as 21 Savage, at least in terms of like a mainstream breakthrough popularity, right? He hasn't soared to those heights until over the past 2 years in his track Enemy with Imagine Dragons and Surround Sound being a grower of a hit. Didn't necessarily pop off 2 years ago when it came out, but it has gotten a lot of traction over the last year and become one of JID's most popular songs. He is a glitch on features, as we know, and like I said, he is an album that I think will be deemed a modern classic when it's all said and done. With the Forever Story, it's the lack of discography and the lack of influence. I shout out to Earth Gang, who I also left off this list, Johnny Venus and Dr. Dot, who also are Atlanta rappers in the same vein as JID, who are signed to Dreamville and are a lot similar to J. Cole than they are, Young Thug. And I'm not just doing this list based on their, Atlanta-ness, right? It's not just who's the most similar to Atlanta rap in general, right? JID still needs some time. JID still needs some time, especially when we get to talking about some of the people later on this list. Like I said, I could sit here and talk all day about Jid's flows, Jid's rhyme schemes, his lyrics, his entendres, because they're nuts. They're off the wall. He is the best pure rapper on this list, but I'm not just taking pure rapping ability and pure discography into this list. When we're talking about the greats from one area, we got to talk about things like influence, things like success, which again, normally I'm not attributing to, the most successful rappers aren't the best, but for what we're talking about here, it does matter. And that brings us to number 6, who was really the second ever. The first super popular Atlanta rapper was a duo, but the first super popular Atlanta solo act. We got to talk about T.I. Tip. He was number 3 on Complex's list, and I could see that, right? Because he was mega mainstream throughout the 2000s and the 2010s, right? He had longevity. Trap Music is a classic album. There are amazing songs on there, and he is really the person who laid down the foundation for modern trap music, in my opinion. He has hella hits, and again, he is someone who I haven't listened to a lot of his discography, maybe 2 of his newer albums like The Libra, and as well as Trap Music, which again, really laid down the law for what it means to be trap, right? Someone that I need to listen to more of, for sure. Do I need to listen to Urban Legend? Yes. Do I need to listen to Dime Trap? Yes. Will I? Also yes. But again, from what I'm being presented with the success that he has, with how he put trap music on the map and put Atlanta on the map again for a completely different sound, his mention here and this high on the list I think is definitely worth. He's someone who I think as I listen to his catalog may appreciate with time and move up this list. So if I listen and find out he has even more classic records, like I said, he has hella hits, mega popular, superstar in his own right, and I think he deserves a little more respect than he gets, again, at least from what I can gather. Now this top 5 gets real tricky, right? Because first of all, there is going to be some heavy bias that shows. On my part, it is going to be maybe a little bit of new school bias. It is going to be maybe a little bit of a preferential bias, like certain rappers that I just in general like and listen to more than others, although all 5 of these rappers get a lot of play for me. And before we get into it, I should give a quick shout out. I don't know if you guys peeped, we are rocking the Future and Metro shirt from the We Trust You tour. This, of course, is emulating the infamous album cover by Mobb Deep, which I love that album, and it was a must cop for me because we were talking about 2 Atlanta legends. Even though Metro Boomin is from St. Louis, he is like one of the founding fathers of the current sound of Atlanta music. But that's not who we're talking about. At number 5, we're talking about the most recent Grammy Rap Album of the Year winner, Killer Mike, one half of Run the Jewels, someone who, admittedly, I have some solo catalog to catch up on, right? But his most recent album, Michael, was goddamn amazing. Rap music is great in its own right. He has tracks like Scientists and Engineers that will probably live on for years after this as incredible collaborations, especially with fellow Atlanta legends like Future and Andre 3000. Killer Mike is extremely versatile in his content matter and talks about so much throughout his music. He had a recent album for Sinners and Saints, which was pretty good. He attempted at some more mainstream-ish cuts, and it felt like kind of like an epilogue to the Michael era. You get remixes for songs on the album on there. Overall, a solid project that I'd recommend checking out. Right, his solo run alone would get him in this top 10, right? But what pushes him to the next level is his work with LP and Run the Jewels. Run the Jewels 2 is a classic album. The first Run the Jewels is good. It's a good introduction to what this super experimental, high voltage, and rebellious duo would go on to do, especially in what is their biggest moment in the mainstream eye yet, Run the Jewels 4, RTJ 4. This came out in 2020 around the time when there was a lot of racial tension around the George Floyd protests. There was those protests all across America, and this was some fucking protest music where Killer Mike and LP were deep into their socially conscious bag. And they were just dropping banger after banger after banger on here. Whether it be the single Ooh La La, which was a hit in its own right, maybe not mega popular, but I know a hit song when I hear one. Go check that out if you don't know what I'm talking about right now. Or their amazing tracks like Walking in the Snow and Holy Kalamafuck. Every song on this album bangs, and there's so much high voltage energy that you just can't get from anywhere else in the hip-hop game right now. And for the fact that Killer Mike is irreplaceable, that's what brings him at number 5. And number 4, I forgot to mention, Killer Mike was number 14 on Complex's list, which was a little wild to me. My number 4 is Complex's number 8, and in my opinion, the most disrespected rapper of all time. We're talking about Big Boy, the other half of Outkast, right? Because everyone always talks about Dre, talks about 3 Stacks and how great he is. Because obviously, Andre's a legend, right? But Big Boy always seems to be left out. Andre 3000 will top some people's GOAT list and barely make top 20 on others, which is crazy to me. Because first of all, Big Boy actually has a solo career. Not that I've listened to albums like Sir Lush's Left Foot, which are highly praised, but it's there. People, you know what I mean? It's there. There's 2 tangible runs from Big Boy. And on his work with Outkast, you got to consider Outkast has at least 3 classic albums when you're looking at it. When we're talking about Aquemini, when we're talking about ATLiens, when we're talking about Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music, and of course everyone will jump at me and say Stankonia should be on there too. That is an elite crop of albums. You also got to look at Speaker Box / The Love Below, which is Big Boy and Andre's both combined solo group album where like it's 2 hours and they each have a solo album. I just don't get the disrespect for Big Boy because he's obviously one of the best of all time, because Outkast isn't the almost a mythical level of legendary figure in hip-hop they are without the other half. Big Boy has fast fucking flows. He flows effortlessly all the time, and he has great lyricism too. Like the only reason he really gets disrespected is because Andre stands out a lot more than him with his vocal inflections, with his singing, with his ambition. Big Boy, yeah, maybe a little bit more standard in the verses. You know what you're getting in terms of his flows and his cadences, but he's always got some great stuff to say, great storytelling, and someone who deserves a lot more respect from the hip-hop community. Shout out to Big Boy. But now we are moving on to the top 3. And this is where my bias is going to show, right? Because I'm 21. Not savage, I'm just 21 years old. I'm repping the Future and Metro shirt. You know what I mean? Atlanta trap is the biggest thing in hip-hop right now, and it has been for the last 5 years. And so to me, this is the Atlanta I know. People who are older than me from a different time, the Atlanta they know might be T.I. and Jeezy, or it might be Gucci Mane if we're talking the early 2010s, or if we're even going back to the 90s and talking about Goody Mob, like CeeLo Green, who I left off this list, and Killer Mike and Outkast. But no, we're talking about at number 3, Free Young Thug, who was number 6 on Complex's list. Now, I'm not gonna squabble about that, right? Because that's solid. But Thug is someone who, unlike the T.I.s of this list, unlike the Big Boys and Killer Mikes of this list, I've heard this man's entire catalog. And yeah, there's some not great stuff. Like any rapper who you've listened to the whole catalog of. Name me one artist, other than maybe Jid, because he only has 3 albums, that you've listened to every one of their projects and singles, and there's not like at least one miss. At least one miss. Even legends like Nas and Jay-Z have their weak moments. And it's not because every rapper, and it's not because they missed, it's because when you're an amazing rapper and you put out 10 albums in your career, there's going to be the ones that are not as good, not as innovative, not as special as the others. It happens to everybody. And it'll happen to everybody on this list who I haven't listened to their whole discography, right? So back to Young Thug. Second most influential person out of Atlanta, maybe the first most unique, because he is essentially a singer trapped in a rapper's body. And what do I mean by that? That what makes Thug so special is his singing, is the way he uses his voice. He is so vocally experimental on albums like Jeffrey, and throughout his whole career, his whole discography, he's really uncomparable to anyone else with, again, the singing he does, but also just, again, the vocal magic he pulls out on tracks like Kanye West or on Wyclef Jean, where he walked so the Playboy Cardis of this world could run, right? And he has elite discography, talking about Jeffrey, talking about Slime Season 3, talking about So Much Fun, talking about Punk, talking about Barter 6. Where do you want me to stop? Like, very few artists in the history of rap have done it like Thug. And it's not because Thug's the best lyricist. Obviously, he's not, right? He's got a lot of wild-ass lyrics, but it's what he brings, like, very few artists bring more personality than Thug. He is so brutally honest in his tracks, and that is something that makes him so special. And then whenever he gets to rap and are singing, you can tell he's putting his full effort into it. He is really trying to be a special and revered and important icon for rap music, and he does a great job at it. One of my personal favorite rappers too, again, which is where some bias is showing, right? I call that out, you know what I mean? If I was to make a top 15, top 20 of my favorite rappers list, he'd be pretty high on there. And so would my number 2 pick, also the number 2 pick of Complex. We're talking about Future. I got the Future shirt on. It's not for no reason. It's not by coincidence. It's because we're talking about Atlanta Goats. And Future, again, changed the sound of modern rap and modern trap music when he came into the game. His use of auto-tune and auto-crooning was similar to someone like Lil Wayne, who experimented with that, but also so different in terms of what he was rapping about, the type of instrumentals he was rapping over, and that's how he differentiated himself. The repetitive choruses he would bring, and his fast flows and his slurred delivery was unheard in the mainstream until Future came about, and now everybody wants to sound like Future, and that alone is enough to earn him a spot on this list. But again, he has his fair share of misses, like World on Drugs, his collab album with Juice WRLD, or Baby Pluto X Pluto, his collab album with Lil Uzi Vert. But he also has catalog, DS2, Future, Hendrix, Monster, 56 Nights, Purple Rain, and he just added another stellar project to that list with We Don't Trust You. And We Still Don't Trust You is like kind of a follow-up to Hendrix, where we see Future back in this R&B type bag, and he's giving out emotional performances, and he is not slowing down. I Never Liked You is his most successful project to date besides We Don't Trust You, and it's not even one of his best, and he's got hits. He is one of the most popular rappers in the game right now, and he has been for almost 10 damn years. Like, very few people have done it like Future, and again, not the best lyricist, not the best content matter, right? He's one of the first people to popularize not just being a drug dealer, but a drug addict, being both at the same time, being an extreme misogynist and womanizer in his music, right? But he still made it this far in the game, and that stuff, like art, is subjective. The stuff he's saying, who even knows if he feels what he's rapping about, right? That's just the music that's popular right now, and he's making it. He is at the top of his game, and allegedly he's got a mixtape coming on the way. That seems like it's going to be amazing. He clearly cares about stacking his legacy even further, and that's why he's number 2 on this list. I don't think there's anyone else you could argue should be number 2. Just like I don't think there's anyone you should argue to be number 1. The only person on this list who could ever top Dre is Jid. And he would have to go on a stellar run to even do that. He would need a couple more albums, the quality of the Forever Story. But we're talking about Andre 3000, the first half of Outkast, right? Someone who is atop many people's GOAT list, who is in many people's top 3, or Mount Rushmore, or whatever you want to call it. Someone who changed hip-hop, again, not only with the way him and Big Boy burst onto the scene with this more psychedelic rap style, right? With these different type of flows and different type of deliveries and cadences. He's someone who every time they dropped an album leveled up stylistically. Looking at an album like Stankonia, which came later on in their run together, but was so out there, so artful, and something like hip-hop has never seen before and will never see again. The type of singing bags he was getting into there, the type of songwriting bags he was getting into there with Big Boy cannot be understated. He's someone who, when he did his half of The Love Below, when he did his half of Speaker Box, The Love Below, his half being The Love Below, got so far away from what we know to be traditional hip-hop on tracks like Roses and Take Your Cool Off that it almost can't be categorized. Like, of course, it's still a hip-hop album. It's very hip-hop adjacent, but at points he's so deep into his funk bag or his soul bag with his incredible singing and otherworldly vocal ability. Again, Andre 3000 walked so young Thug could run. Thug is someone who is obviously inspired by him when it comes to his artistry. And Andre broke the game. He really, he's someone who, if he kept going making music, could have been considered one of the best of all time. But he bowed out. Well, he had an incredibly elite catalog and is yet to drop any solo music. And a lot of people beg him to. But at this point, why would he need to? He has an elite list of features. I did a tier list of all of Andre 3000's features if you guys want to go check that out. But what else does he have left to prove? He's clearly one of the GOATs ever. Not just of Atlanta. He's not just the GOAT of Atlanta. He's one of the best rappers, most important hip-hop figures of all time. But that ends this for me, guys. Let me know what you're feeling about my list in the comments. How would you rank these guys? Who was your top 3 Atlanta? Maybe your Atlanta Mount Rushmore. Drop it in the comments below. This is the time where if you enjoyed that video, hit that like and all that other shit that I said before. But yeah, until then, I will see you next time. Be sure to check for my Days Before Rodeo review, my Hardstone Psycho review, and maybe go check out some other videos I made in the past if you were feeling this one. But until then, peace.